You're listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with Jess Weiner. Don't worry. This is a joyful podcast about life, death, and everything in between. Hello there. This intro is going to be directly intended for my preteen self. Hey girl, hi there. I see you, the one poring over magazines and obsessively watching The Facts of Life and obsessing over the Mickey Mouse Club show. This episode is for you, because if you would have told me when I was a preteen and a teenager that I would be interviewing the star of Disney Plus's High School Musical, the series, I wouldn't have believed you. But it's true. Today's guest is a gem of a human. He is super dialed in. He is only 19 years old, which actually makes me quite hopeful for the world. I am talking about none other than Joshua Bassett. And Josh is a singer, a songwriter, a musician. Of course, he plays Ricky on the show High School Musical, the series. And in fact, in this last season, he co-wrote one of the songs that you know from that show called Just for a Moment. And while we've all been in quarantine, the incredible Josh has released his latest single called Anyone Else. I met Josh the way I meet a lot of amazing young talent. I think in the last episode with Zuri Adele, I mentioned that I do these workshops for studios and networks here in Los Angeles. And I do a lot of personal development work and workshops for young actors, actors of all ages. But I really have a special place in my heart for young people in Hollywood who are trying to figure out how to give to themselves personally and work on themselves internally, while they're also giving off so much externally to the world. So I went to Utah and I had a chance to do a workshop with the High School Musical, the series cast, and met Josh there. And there is something incredibly special about this cast. I know the show is a hit, and I'm sure lots of fans are watching this now, and you are right to be in such fandom for this show. When I met the cast there, they are just incredibly also dialed in, really connected, very smart, very sweet, very passionate about the world and their work. And so you might see more of their faces on this show with me here. But when I met Josh, we just fell immediately into a conversation about what it means to live a good life, like pretty organically. And this was back in January when we could fly places and see people in person. And I hadn't even started to shoot the show yet. And I mentioned to him what I was going to do. And I asked him, would he ever want to come on and talk about that? It's not quite Hollywood. It's not quite about High School Musical, and he immediately said yes. So I was so excited to have this conversation with him. You will see just from our Zoom call, because by the time we did this show, we were in safer at home measures here in Los Angeles. So this episode was recorded via Zoom, and his energy bounces off of this Zoom interview. He's just a seeker. He's curious. We read a lot of the same books. I think that sort of seeking and self-help interest is so important, and especially in a world where we voraciously consume celebrity culture. It's really hard as a young person to figure out what it means to live a good life in general, and then definitely when you're famous and you have a lot of eyes on you. So I really appreciated Josh's candor, his honesty, and you're going to really love, I think you'll catch this, a moment of really incredible coincidence in this episode that if you're a believer of signs, you're going to want to catch that little moment, because something in my life came full circle in this conversation with Josh. I'm so excited for you to meet him. If you don't already know him and love him, let's dig in with Josh Bassett. I am so excited to have this conversation with you because we first met, I'm a lucky girl. I got to go to the set of High School Musical, the series, and work with your incredible cast on some personal and professional development skills. And I was telling Tim Federle, who is the creator, showrunner on your show, that like I was so impressed by you, by your whole team, by the whole cast of just really smart, thoughtful humans. Do you feel super lucky or what?
It is the most incredible family we have, really. It was so incredible to have you come and kind of, because we obviously are able to have, some difficult conversations with each other, but it is nice to kind of, all get in a room and kind of have a reason to really speak on what's on our hearts. And, it was really a beautiful moment, but the cast is so incredible. And like you said, so thoughtful and so special. Each one of them has such a unique and important voice. And that's why I think it's just truly remarkable that we're all able to come together for this show and be in one place. And I learned so much from them, and it's just a beautiful environment overall.
I know, I could feel it when I was there, and I've worked with so many different, casts before, and companies and groups of people. And I just felt like there is really something special going on there. But you and I got into some great sidebar conversations about books we were reading and ways that we were looking at the world. So when I was thinking about an opportunity for us to dig in differently on this program, I was really super pumped about that. There's a lot I don't know about you. And on this show, I love to talk a little bit about kind of our origin story and what makes us who we are and what we know about our childhood. And I know that's not that far away from you, but I want to know, what do you know about your birth story? Do you know anything about your birth story for your mom? Like anything about the time you were born?
Sure. Yeah. I think I was born around 5 a.m. On December 22nd. My younger sister was born on December 23rd, 2 years later. And then my older sister, a couple up, I have 5. So a couple up, she was born on December 28th. So we all have the same birth week, which is fun.
And you're all Capricorns then, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm right on the cusp. I'm a Sagicorn because I was born.
Sagicorn. Okay.
So technically I am a Capricorn, but a lot of people tell me that I seem like a Sagittarius. I don't know the difference, but that's what people tell me. So that's fun. But yeah, I mean, the story, I'm probably going to get it wrong. But something like so like I said, I have 5 sisters. For older, they were all delivered by a male doctor. And then I was the first to be delivered by a female nurse because the doctor was late, actually.
Oh,
so the doctor was like, you got plenty of time. I'm not worried about it. And he didn't show up. And so the nurse had to deliver me. But I just thought it was funny. I got 4 sisters. And then my little sister was delivered by a male doctor. So it's just funny how that
You have one below you. So are you like 4th out of 5?
I am 5th out of 6.
Oh, you're 5 out of 6.
Yeah. I got one younger.
Bless your mom.
I know, right? And we were all homeschooled. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have to meet her one day, I think.
Oh yeah. She's a super mom for sure. Yeah.
That's incredible. And where were you born? Where did you grow up?
San Diego, Oceanside. Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I was homeschooled, so we were near the beach. We went to the beach probably 3 times a week if we could convince our dad to take us. I had a great neighborhood. We didn't really have any kids in our neighborhood, so it was just a lot of me and my sisters kind of like running around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great.
If you could think back on your childhood, like how might you describe it in 3 words? Just the first 3 words that come to the top of your mind.
That is great. Musical. Musical, silly, and I'm trying to think of a word for the ability to be unapologetically myself. I don't know what the word would be.
I love it. It feels like authentic, or it feels
authentic. Yeah, great. I think that's something that I didn't recognize until later on is how the environment that was created because we were homeschooled and because we all did musical theater, because we were all, my dad was a musician, music was always around. That really shaped a lot of my musical taste. But, the ability to finish our schoolwork by 11 a.m. and cram it all in so that we could go outside and chalk and roller skate all day and like make films. I made films my entire childhood, like with my sisters. I'd write scripts and we'd shoot them and do, stupid camera tricks and just spend all day creating. And I think that shaped me in so many ways that I didn't realize I was so blessed to have that
no kidding
environment. Yeah.
Well, and what a blessing.
And friends, yeah.
And to play. Like, it just sounds like you played a lot.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that.
Totally.
So what do you think were some of like the big, if there weren't a lot of kids in your neighborhood and you were homeschooled, like what were some of the lessons that you learned in childhood as you were developing yourself? So if you're unapologetically like who you are and you're silly, which I love, like what kind of messages or lessons came up for you in childhood that you remember like kind of dealing with?
Sure. I mean, I don't think I thought much about it when I was younger. I think I just was, and that's kind of the beautiful thing is like, I didn't have to, I did theater since I was like 8. So it wasn't like I wasn't exposed to other kids, but generally I felt like I didn't have to be, I wasn't very self-conscious in a good way.
That's great.
And I think honestly, the biggest thing I could take away if I think back is because, like I said, the environment that we had, I feel like I grew up with this belief that I could kind of do whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't have any limitations because it was like, you know, we had a piano, so I could go and pluck out something on the piano and then the same day write, film, and edit a film with my sisters, and then go to musical theater practice and then the next day build a fort and roller skate all day. It's like again, obviously I did the schoolwork in between that, but that was even fun too, because, you know, me and my sisters were all in different grades, but we all did school together. And so, you know, you're like, it's just, I guess it's just like not having any limitations and kind of just doing what I want to do and not letting anyone tell me that I couldn't do it, because that was kind of the culture we had created in my family, was just do it.
It sounds like it was very intentional, but now I'm sure you realize, do you feel grateful for the fact that you had a very unique kind of upbringing in childhood then?
Very much so. I did. It's funny because I spent a great deal of time when I became a teenager trying to get away from that, trying to not be the homeschooled kid.
I'm sure.
I did not want to be associated with that. And ultimately that led to a handful of, you know, stupid decisions, because it's like, I make friends and they're doing things that I'm like, oh, this is wrong. But I'm also like, my whole life I've been like not allowed to do anything like that. And so of course I'm like, well, this is what they do, so this has got to be normal. I am not normal. This is normal. So I'm going to adapt to be like that. And ultimately that's, you know, not great. So there was a bit of an overcorrection there, but looking, and when I was, you know, still in school, I constantly asked my parents if I could go to public school. I just wanted to fit in.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah. Was there a time where you really wanted to go blend in?
Very much. I would make PowerPoint presentations. Literally, I'm pretty sure I made 5 or 6 PowerPoint presentations, and I would go out and I would just start crying when I was like, because I just knew that it was a no, but I would still go for it. And my mom
You're learning how to pitch at a young age.
Literally. Yeah, exactly. No, I straight up I would come up with a PowerPoint. I'd be like, I'd talk myself up for like an hour in my room, and I'd be like, this is the time. You just got to do it. And I'd go out there and I'd be like, so I know you guys are, and my mom just, no. And I'm like, just, can you? And so I would like start crying. Yeah, it was rough, but ultimately everything that's happened in my life obviously is for a reason, and I don't regret anything, but looking back now, I'm really glad that it happened the way it all happened. But yeah, I did resent a little bit that the fact that I was homeschooled while I was homeschooled.
I think that's normal. I mean, I can't imagine anything like, it's healthy developmentally, right? As a kid to go through and like want what you don't have. Or I mean, I grew up in Miami. I went to performing arts schools, but they were mostly in the city. And I remember like when it came time to choose a college, I like wanted everything but a city environment, right? You just want to go and experience like whatever I thought was sort of normal college life. And I loved the school. I went to Penn State. I loved that school, but man, did I miss, you know, when you go away from what you know, you get a perspective, right?
100%. Yeah. Even now, like when I go home to San Diego, I'm like, oh my gosh, San Diego is beautiful. The weather is, the air here is perfect. Like, it's just, you're right. It's crazy when you take for granted what you grew up with. You don't realize it until you don't have it, like you said.
So I'm curious about like in a musical family, everybody I was reading, even your mom, everybody's playing an instrument or enjoying music in some way, right?
Right.
So I'm curious, like, did you have professional aspirations to do this? Were you the only one? Was it like something you thought you would actually be sitting here and really occupying like a professional career of doing what you loved?
No, not at all. I like I said, I didn't really question a lot of it. I did what I loved.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, I did it. I did a lot of musical theater, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be an actor. I didn't really have any goals of pursuing that. I was like, I'm going to go to USC for film and music theory and see that was just the plan that I had come up with, because I was like, those are the 2 things that I love. So maybe I'll just do that. I didn't really know. I was going to like community college when I was 15 or 16. That's kind of when it all sort of happened, and we can get into that in a second. But growing up, you know, my dad was and still is a professional pianist and drummer. My grandma was a professional pianist and drummer who taught him how to drum and play.
What's her name? What's your grandma's name?
Anne.
I like You'd be in big trouble if you forgot that, buddy.
Can you imagine that? Well, she's grandma.
I know. I just like learning people's grandparents' names because I love my grandparents. Well, I don't have them anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So Grandma Ann. Grandma Ann was a badass drummer and pianist.
Yes, she was. Yeah. She taught my dad, and they drummed and played together since he was young. They would do gigs and switch instruments. And so I really truly believe that is fully in my DNA. So, that's great. My mom was in like marching band when she was in high school, and she has some musicality as well. She was a dancer, I believe. So, it's definitely in there for sure.
So tell me about the switch though. I'm curious, like, cause I don't know this part of your story actually. So apologies if you've told this a lot, but I am curious how you go from this like carefree childhood where you're creatively expressing and, you're doing your requisite rebelling or things that you need to be doing. I get all of that, but I want to know where it clicks for you, where you're like, I'm going to try to do this professionally, or does it come to you? Like, how did that happen?
So, okay, that's so funny that you mentioned the sort of rebellious stage, because that was actually a key influence on what ended up happening. So basically, when it comes to like musical instruments, when I was 7, my dad taught me how to drum for my church. So I played every weekend at my church with my dad. So he played piano, I played drums. So again, carrying on the family tradition. So when I was about, I want to say 14, my grandpa passed away, and my grandma gave me his ukulele. And that was the first sort of invitation that I had gotten to that. I mean, again, I'd messed around the piano. I played drums when I was 7, but I wasn't actively learning an instrument. And so I was like, I'm going to learn how to play ukulele. Mom, can you give me a teacher? And she was like, we can't afford a teacher. I'm like, okay, I'll just learn it myself. So I think my friend helped me at one point figure out some stuff. So I learned ukulele, and then when I was 14, I won't go into any details, but I got in a lot of trouble with my parents, and I was grounded for a month. And so it was like during the summer, and it was dead. It was nothing. I couldn't have a phone, nothing. The first day was, I was losing my mind. And then somehow I convinced my mom to let me get a guitar, a very cheap guitar. I think it was less than $100, a very cheap guitar. And I had a month. And so I just asked my mom, can you print out these chord charts? Can you print out this chord sheet? Can you, whatever it is? And so she would do that for me, but I wasn't allowed to go on the computer or anything. And so I learned guitar through that. And by the end of it, I was able to play guitar. And so that was like ultimately what launched so much. So yeah, it ended up being a good thing that I got in trouble. I'm glad looking back.
I mean, honestly, you can't ever predict where those paths are going to take you.
Totally.
Can I go back to your grandpa? What's your grandpa's name?
Grandpa Larry.
Grandpa Larry. Will you talk to me about him? What was he like? And how old were you when you were just under 14 when he passed?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. He was a musician as well. He actually though was not in the bloodline. My grandma married him after she had my mom. So yeah. But still, like his spirit, it was still in the family, and he was very musical as well, which I'm now thinking about. Like, that is crazy.
Well, that's even crazier if he's not in the bloodline, and then she was also marrying a musician.
Totally.
Like,
and in a way,
you couldn't escape it if you tried.
I know, man. It was destiny. It was meant to be. But I even feel like, the fact that I did have his ukulele, that part of that, like, I really, this might sound cheesy or a little bit hippy dippy, but I really do believe, I have firsthand knowledge that guitars can have, I don't want to say souls, but they can have songs in them, and you can carry that with you. And so I think that is kind of a cool way where I've kept him with me is through the ukulele. It's right over there.
It is.
Yeah. So it's like, and again, that was my first instrument. So it's really neat that, that kind of stuff.
I have a lot of musician friends that I feel like would agree with you that there is soul in the instruments they play. And sometimes, I mean, this is what I love talking about with artists, because sometimes that relationship you have to music or to your voice or to a song or to a lyric, like that's the mystical, magical part of creativity, right? The stuff that you can't predict. I mean, you got grounded. You weren't allowed on the computer. Your mom was actually very nice to you during that grounding period to get you a guitar and print out chords. But
so she made me pay for the guitar, but yeah.
All right. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think there's that intimate relationship that you can create with creativity, right? When you're alone and you kind of, you study it, you give into it, you listen to it.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, as you were playing in this space, as you were teaching yourself to do that, did you ever
Right.
have visions of yourself like in front of a crowd? Or I know you were a performer, so like I know that was a familiar place to be, but did you have visions of where you'd share your creativity, I guess is my question.
No, to be completely honest, no, I didn't.
That's
I
cool.
think I just, that's kind of the cool thing about it is like I was,
Yep.
I think, you know, one of the first things I wrote, it was like I was in rehearsal for a show and I just found a cool chord progression and I just started singing and wrote it down and I was like, oh, what do you think of this? And I showed it to 2 friends and it was super cheesy and will never see the light of day. But you know, they were like, oh, this is really good. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And then it's funny, I've told this story before, but quickly, what actually inspired me to write music was there was this girl and I was going to ask her to homecoming and 3 guys had said no to her. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to go big, if I'm going to go for this, I got to go big. And so I was like, how can I stand out? And so I was like, I got to write her a song. So I quickly got my ukulele, came up with a short song, grabbed some flowers, went to her door with a few friends and sang her the song. She said yes. And I vividly remember driving home and thinking, that was not that hard at all. Actually, I was like, that took minimal effort to write that. What if I actually tried? And so, you know, that was kind of what sparked that. And I just continued to write. But again, I never really thought about it. And then later on when I was 16 and going to community college, my, again, not to go into the whole life story, but my oldest sister's friend from college was trying to cast something. She's a manager. She reached out to me and I was like, okay, I'll go to LA and meet you. Like this is going to turn into anything. And that was right when I had started, you know, I'd been a little bit into writing music. And so that was a very interesting thing. When I met them, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of write music, I guess. And that was the first time I'd even thought about the fact that I do. And so anyway, you know, the rest is kind of history there, but
was it for this that she was casting or is something different? No. Okay. Yeah, but it got you on the path of thinking about doing that. Absolutely. And it sounds like if you come from the kind of childhood and background that you come from, then that sort of curiosity, I think that's a real benefit of homeschooling, right? The structure can be very different and
that, you know, and the self-taughtness about it, you know, is you become resourceful, especially in a big family. You're already resourceful because you have to look out for yourself because you can't get all the attention because there's 6 of you. Right. So yeah, totally. It's a combination between the big family and then the ability to self-learn when you are, you know.
Yeah. And you had all sisters. So you were like also experiencing some intense feminine energy, which I'm sure is very helpful for your creativity too. No, seriously, I mean that not even to make fun of it. I think feminine energy is
I'm not making fun of it either. I think it is too. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. It's the flow. Absolutely. It's literally like kind of the flow and magic of being a woman is pretty incredible. And you had 6 of them around you. So
totally. Yeah.
Lucky you. Yeah. So as you get this kind of like moment, and by the way, when I don't think I realized this when we first met. So when you were like little, when you were like 8, you did a version of High School Musical, like in your musical theater.
Yeah.
That's pretty meta, Josh. That's weird.
That is weird. It was a very bizarre realization when I don't remember when I remembered that. I think it was after I got cast. I was like, oh yeah, that was my first show was High School Musical. Like crazy. That full circle. That's weird, right? That is weird. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes that just feels like kismet. Okay. So for people who are like listening or watching, as we talk about some of these stories, we always look for patterns, right? Like patterns in our dreams or patterns in our lessons.
Right.
And I know you've got 19 years on this earth right now. So we're barely, so we're you know, and God willing, it's a long time to come. So you're in the throes of this, but I guess like, if you could pause for a moment and step back and say like, what are the things that you're learning so far? Like, what are the patterns that you think that you're noticing in your life that are becoming important to you? That are maybe just, you know, themes that you're exploring in your life. Cause I think, you know, it struck me when we spoke the first time that you were starting to think like that, looking at some of those patterns.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I fully believe, I think, I'm going to totally misquote it, and I don't know who it is, so we might have to do some fact checking. Yep. But it's coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous, I think.
Josh, this is the second time somebody has used this on this podcast today.
Well, that's no coincidence. Wow.
That's a sign for me. You don't even know it, but that is a sign for me.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Oh my God.
Of course.
Okay. I think it was Albert Einstein who said that.
Yes, you're right. You're right. It was Albert Einstein. Crazy.
Okay, wait.
Crazy.
Sorry, I'm a little bit out of my body.
Meta.
Dude, it's so meta. Will you say that one more time? Say that quote one more time.
Sure. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Yeah, I fully believe that. I also love the idea that you can either live your life as if everything is a miracle or as if nothing is. There's no in between. And I am a firm believer that the magic and mystery that is life is no accident. You know, it's everything is magical. And if once you have that lens, you notice how many, crazy coincidences are. And once you have a trust in that and trust that, if you show up and you are honest and you put in what you're born to do, it's like now when it comes to whole predestination and free will, that's a whole other thing. But I do believe that the universe kind of meets you where you are and matches what you bring. So I fully believe that. And I think I've recently been meditating a lot and just practicing being as present as possible. And I think anyone who's tapped into any sort of meditation or presence practice knows that it's a different world if you're able to be in that kind of mindset and rise above thought and kind of, there's all that. I'm going through all of it, all the self-help books.
I love it. I know. Well, that's where we bonded because we bonded over Eckhart Tolle and we were talking about, and Brene Brown and all of the amazing writers. But I think our next book club, you and I need to be Pema Chodron. Have you read Pema's books yet?
I've not.
So Pema is a Buddhist nun and an incredible meditation teacher, amongst other things. But pick up the Pocket Pema. I read from it randomly every day.
Okay.
And she's just, anyway, she's magical.
I'm writing this down right now.
Just to what you said, meditation has become an important moment for me, or a practice, I should say, for me too, to stay in the moment, because we're in such a fast world of hustle and grind and perform and produce and put it out into the world and react, right? And a lot of reacting and that kind of
versus
slowing
responding.
down. Yes, versus responding. And then when you slow down, and I guess the difference for those people listening that I think about it, and you tell me what you think, but a reaction can be emotional, knee-jerk, and sort of based on external validation. And a response can be
comes from a deeper place.
Yes, thoughtful, meditative, introspective, and so
objective.
I think objective. And I think that we don't respond enough. We react a lot.
Absolutely. I love the analogy of, it's like that the everyday life is like a waterfall. And a lot of times people have their head in the waterfall and they don't realize that they're drowning. And sometimes you have to take your head out of the waterfall and watch the water go, and then you can make a better thing. But a lot of times the problem is that people are stuck in the waterfall and they don't know. And this might sound like crazy to people who don't know really what we're talking about or haven't really experienced that for themselves. But I guarantee you, once you do, there's no turning back. Once you realize that shift that comes when you really can be present and meditate. And
I think more young people too are clicking into that because, your generation, unfortunately, is the most sort of depressed, anxious generation we've got, even though we've got the most connectivity, the most open knowledge, but the different kind of connectivity. But and it's so, as I study them for my work and study all the generations, like this is the one where I feel like we're able to do a reset in, and in some ways we're all sort of resetting right now, right? We've been asked to stay home. We've been asked to mind our wellness. We've been asked to mind each other's wellness. And there is something, talking about coincidence there is something about when you're looking to reset a pattern in your life, you can't do it running 1,000 miles an hour.
No, you cannot. Absolutely. Yeah. You have to be still.
Do you have these conversations with your peers, or do you find that this is like not something they're talking about right now?
It's totally 50-50 for real. Like I think, I kind of naturally gravitate towards people who think like that. And what's funny is just a quick anecdote on what we're talking about coincidence and how that all works is I was in my favorite coffee shop and I'm reading Eckhart Tolle's book, and he talks about how sort of the thing about, the coincidences and how all that works, and how once you pay attention and once you're ready and you're paying attention to it, you'll notice stuff happening to you that can be magical. And again, once the universe kind of recognizes that, once you're able to recognize the magic, then the magic happens. It's kind of like, is the second you cease to believe you can fly. What is the quote? Forget it. Doesn't matter. We'll look it up later. But basically I read that and I was like, okay, universe, I'm ready. If there's anything you got to tell me, I'm here. I went to the restroom And I came back and there were two ladies sitting talking about the book that I was reading. They had both read it. And I end up talking to this girl next to me for an hour and a half. We have this most wonderful conversation about meditation, all this stuff, crazy awesome. And she tells me that she was driving and she was about to go home because she got off work early. And for some reason, she looked at the exit for the coffee shop that she's a regular at and just thought, maybe I'll go and read. And I'm telling you, we figured out the timing was the second that I was like, I'm ready. If there's anything, I'm here, I'm open. She had this urge to get off and go to that coffee shop. And then we ended up talking for 90 minutes, which I don't think is a coincidence at all. No. So it is true that you gravitate towards those people. And it is really neat to speak with other people who get the language and yep. to strengthen that. But also it's kind of a test when you're around people who maybe aren't as conscious, for lack of a better word, or mm-hmm. Who maybe don't, practice that meditation in that way yeah. is by being present and by staying in yourself. You everything you do, every energy that you put off has an effect, and same That's thing right. towards you. And so recognizing that and recognizing the most important thing you can do for anybody is, one, accept them exactly as they are, mm-hmm. and two, to stay in your in yourself and mm-hmm. just be there and not get sucked into the energy that people are maybe unconsciously emitting. And yeah, that is one of the most important lessons is being able to stay aware and stay present when you're yep. around in an environment in which you're being maybe pulled. And a lot of times people are tested when they go home for the holidays. That's and right now people are being tested because they're stuck home for months with their family, and everyone loves their family, but for 3 months straight, that's right. like, that can be tough for people. So yeah. staying in your light is a yeah. challenge. And it's a, I kind of look at this, even though I am alone right now, as a, it's a practice during all yes. this. It's a constant.
Well, yeah, we're meeting ourselves where we are right now. We don't yeah. have a choice.
Facing where you are is tough. And when you have no distractions, you have no choice. But
of course, yeah. I mean, look, we live in a world built on distractions. It's so easy to be on that hamster wheel of success, which we glorify in this culture, right? And especially in this country, we're very attached to success as an extension of worth, as an extension right. of value. Mm-hmm. And it takes something to question that, because, a lot of people come to this country, or they're growing up in families that aspire to have material things because that's been what's been put forth in their family system to say, this is what makes a person. And so to question anything you've been given from family history or cultural history or societal history is really hard work. It doesn't happen easily. You have Absolutely. To meet yourself, and it's messy.
It is messy. Yeah.
It's messy.
There's so much you don't realize too. Right. It's crazy. The patterns that are instilled.
Yes. And also when we talk about meeting ourselves, I think if people don't share in that language, what I mean by that is, when we're on social all day long, or we're rushing from here to there, or we're keeping ourselves busy and we're not having time to sit and breathe and go within and just kind of be still. A lot of people, I used to think meditating had to be productive. I would be like, well, I have to sit down and this is going to feel
my life.
Feel a certain way. I'm going to feel nirvana. And then when I had teachers who finally said to me, that is not the point. The point is, even if you feel anxious, you just label it and you move on. You're aware of it and you move on. And I love the idea that right now, we have a giant mirror facing us, and it's who do we want to be right now? Who are
Absolutely.
We? What have we been valuing? We've been having all this talk about essential in our life, what's necessary.
Right.
What you're talking about is necessary to me. I feel like that.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, it's ultimately changed my life. Even simple breathing techniques that I've learned, which again, I judged my whole life. I was like, meditation. Yeah. Okay. That'll fix everything. It's but it kind of will. If you actually try it, it's insane. And it doesn't need to be this spiritual thing. It's, it's you do you, but don't knock it till you try it is my best advice for that. But that's interesting that you say that about kind of materialistic things and putting our value and worth in things. I am completely fine and I've had a wonderful childhood, but my, six siblings, we didn't have any extra money whatsoever. It was a constant, my mom would just be like, we can't get that many groceries this week, and that's okay. And, my, just that not having much growing up. Again, I did have a comfortable home and a lovely childhood. And fortunately, one thing that my parents, that I learned from them is they were never once worried. They never showed, they were never, how are we going to pay the bills? It's just going to be harder this month, and we're going to have to, and so that kind of confidence and trust in, life, universe, God, whatever is your thing.
Yeah.
That trust in that, I think, has ultimately, been passed down to me. And I can say that, I haven't spoken about this, and I don't want anyone to feel bad because I'm totally great. But literally 2 weeks before I booked High School Musical, my bank account was at -$2. -$2. I woke up and got a notification, and I was like, okay. I was like, all right, we're going to figure this out. And I was on the phone with my dad, and I was just like, this is how it is. And they were like, there's not much they can do, but
right.
It is crazy how that works. But I feel like that's another thing with social media that has been interesting. And I think from an early age, from like age 11, because I grew up right when social media was like really taking off. Like I think Snapchat came out when I was like maybe 10. And so like literally I grew up with social media as it grew up. But since I was like 11, I think my friend was like, I'm taking a month off social media. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to try it. I was 11 or 12.
Oh my gosh.
And I did. And I remember that being like the best month that I had in like the whole year. And it was crazy. And from then on, I just had this relationship with social media that was like, it's really, once people, I think people are so now I will say it can be a crucial and incredibly valuable tool, and it should be.
Yes.
It should be used for that, and it, in small doses, can be incredibly helpful and wonderful, and is totally something that we should use, and to its extent as much as we can. But I think it's dangerous when people sort of are unconsciously on their phones. You check your screen time, and it's a bit of a wake up call when you realize, oh, I spent 2.5 hours today on Instagram. Like that is 2.5 hours, so I think that relationship from early on has shaped a lot of my life too. And it's
kind of incredible foresight to have as an 11-year-old, to know, or to have a friend that was doing it first, to kind of be like, did he feel like he felt better when he wasn't as plugged into it? Is that why he took time off?
Yeah. I mean, it was a she, and it was my older sister's.
Sorry, yeah.
It's good. It's my older sister's friend.
Okay.
And she was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like you don't realize how much you are upset. And honestly, the two things that I hear for anybody who takes any sort of break from social media, the one thing is I'm happier than I've been in years, or I'm less anxious or nervous than I've been in years. And I don't think I can leave because everyone else is on there and I don't want to miss out. And that's the tricky thing, is like, it's totally FOMO, it's like, it's people feel like, and I get it. 'Cause I go through waves. I'll go off for 2 months and then I'll go on. And when I go on for a day and then I go off, I'm like, oh, I got to check. What did I miss? Meanwhile, when I'm off it for a month, it's never really on my mind. So it's just interesting. It's hard to break free from it when you're
a habit. Listen, it's a habit and it's very addictive. There are studies that show
it's designed to be addictive.
It is designed to be addictive. But
Smarter than all of us.
I love what you're saying though, especially for listeners of all ages, but also I think of parents who are raising kids who might be listening to this and trying to understand the hook in, because look, I didn't grow up with social media, so I can be one of those old fogies kind of saying like, I don't get it, but I do get it because of exactly what you said, which is this is how we create community now. I mean, on one hand, it's distancing, but on the other, it's a way we stay connected to a degree. And so there is an anxiety that I'm going to miss something. That FOMO is real. But you hit it on the head, Josh, which is that we do get anxious, I think, when we get into that compare and despair trap on social media, when what we're consuming is really consuming us. We're looking at his life, her life, their body, their things, their people, their successes. And because it's visual, we visually shortcut process. I mean, everything you and I just spent the last little bit talking about is about an unmeasured, unmarked process of living and being that can't always be shown with a photograph.
Absolutely. Well, and talk about being in the moment. It's like, you know, even Twitter is all about right now. What's happening right now? What's next? What's going on? Just look at this. Look at this. I want to say this. I feel this. Impulsive. All this stuff. And you know, that's ultimately very dangerous because it's like, you know, your attention is in 20 different places, and it's all about, you know, ego and all about that. And again, it's like, whether it's ego being look at me, or, ooh, I wish I was them, or, you know, all that stuff. It's like pointing fingers at everyone and all that. And again, like I said, there's value to that, and it can be a tool and it can be a vehicle for change. And I think that is ultimately the best part about it and why it is vital. But at the same time, like, I don't know if you're on TikTok, but I just recently started using TikTok, and it is one of the most amazing platforms because it's all about the content. It's all about, you know, the joy and the humor and all about that. It's such a, you know, it's less about the conversation about the content and more about the content. And that's why it's such a cool thing. And I think
that
TikTok
makes
really
sense for me and your generation of creators and innate creators, because even as you described your childhood, you know, you were creating all of the time. And it's funny, I'm not an early adopter in technology. I'm a late adopter. Like, if my iPhone changes,
I'm late to everything.
You are? Yeah. Okay. But I'm like depressed if I have to upgrade my phone, because I'm like, man, I got to get used to something again. But I'll tell you what my platform is, and you mentioned it, although it's quite frenetic, is Twitter. But I was an early adopter to Twitter because to me, it's a writer's platform, because, you know, the people who use words the best, the snarkiest, the, you know, kind of, there's it's a visual, it's not a visual medium, right? At least by and large. But I think you find like where you can communicate best on these platforms, and where I always challenge people to think about, where are you being most yourself on those platforms? I feel like my voice on Twitter is maybe a little bit more me than what I try to curate on other platforms. And I think we're in a great reckoning time of thinking about how we communicate now too.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at how we have to do this, you know,
right?
And this is going to be people's school in the fall. This is going to be how people are dating. This is how we're like doing family reunions and graduations. Like, we're in a new abnormal for quite some time until we create a new thing. And so we're going to have to learn. I think what you're talking about that I like is having a critically thinking relationship with media content.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as long, and this is actually a larger thing that I've been kind of realizing, especially during this quarantine, when you have to be self-disciplined or you're done. Because if you don't, if you have nothing, like literally, I didn't shower today until I had this, because I knew that I was going to be on camera. You know, it's like, you need to create things, first of all, like motivate you to get out of bed. But I think the key thing is recognizing what your default is. Because if your default is, you won't even realize it unless you're paying close attention. People don't even know that their default is to just mindlessly scroll on Twitter or on Instagram. It's like, to me, that the social media platforms can be valuable as long as it's a conscious choice to do it. You know, you relaxing and spending the night and not being productive, watching your favorite TV show or eating your, you know, the worst food you can feed yourself is totally great. But I think the biggest lesson I've been learning is it has to be intentional. My default should be productivity, well-being. How do I be in the moment? All this stuff. And then it's okay. You know what? I've worked all day. I'm going to go on Twitter for 10 minutes and see what's happening. I'm going to go on Instagram and I'm going to do this, whatever. And again, I'm not saying you have to earn it or anything, but I'm just saying, like, I try to be more mindful and not be unconsciously sucked into it, because literally, like you said, the chemicals, the dopamine and the apps are so much smarter than us. They're so much smarter, and people don't.
And they're designed to be so. So I think about the little itty bitties who are already on, you know, these platforms and kind of getting ingrained in that. And yet I'm struck by the irony, right, of this conversation, which is, you know, you are in an industry that relies on this medium to a degree, right? And you're on a show and in a world right now where you connect to your fan base and your, you know, and the loyalists out there through that platform as well. And so that's where the business and the culture sort of meet together, don't they? And so when you're up for public consumption, which public figures are, because we put ourselves out there and that's an agreement we make with people, right?
Right.
But then we forget that, it's a package deal, but we forget that we're all human. And like, I can't keep giving and giving and giving until I actually replenish.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing about social media is, like, it's so easy to look at words or a picture on the screen and, whether it's be angry at it, whatever it is, it's so easy to, it's like a flat surface that you see, but like when you're with people and you can feel their energy, or whether it's a video or when you're actually in the room with somebody else, it's so hard to, it's just, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. There's a difference between the 2D and the 3D connection that we're used to having.
Yeah, exactly.
You get a lot more out on a screen. You can't, on a screen, it's harder to pick up all of the other nonverbals sometimes. When you're in a room with somebody, when you're in a group, you're hanging out with a group of friends, when you're hanging out with a group of friends and like something's off with your friend.
The vibe's off. Right,
yeah,
right.
The vibe's off. And, and sometimes with screens, we can kind of hide it. But like when you're in the room, you feel it, or you walk into a room where two people have been arguing and you just kind of like feel the tension. Like
totally.
I'm missing, I think it's hard when we miss those developmental spaces because that teaches you how to be with other people.
Yeah, totally. And I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that's why I try and never have any difficult conversations over text, because I don't.
Good for you.
It's like that, there's no way to really understand the tone and yes, there's a bit of a texting culture, and like people are kind of figuring out, like there's different like, styles of texting that kind of can, people have understood now, and they can kind of hear a little bit more than just read the text. But even so, I try and not.
You can't hear tone in a text. I could get into a fight with my husband over the grocery list that he texts me on the phone. You know what I mean? Like you
exactly.
just like, you kind of put whatever's going on in your mind into that technology.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, like, at the stage and place where you're at right now, you have this beautiful platform to do your art, to share these stories. And I actually think the stories you all are telling with High School Musical, the series, which I don't know, I'm like obligated to say the entire title every time is what I feel like.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's part of the gig.
I love it. But no, but I think that when I watch the stories you're telling and the way that your talented team is telling it, I really do feel like you've taken this, you've taken kind of what's in the zeitgeist right now and the characters and stories and a world that's really important for young people to be experiencing. And so I'm curious for you and just your life journey. Here you are, a dream has been realized, right? I mean, whether you had intentionally set out upon it or you just listened to the magic of the universe, you met luck and opportunity met, right? And preparation and talent, and you're here. What does that feel like when you have a dream realized, or a dream that, other people might have realized? Like, could you put it into words what it feels like to do something you love to do, to express yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, I do have a bit of imposter syndrome, and I don't think I've said this either publicly, but I had a full-on mental breakdown when I was filming the last couple episodes of my show, and I talked to Tim Federle, the creator, because he noticed that I was upset, and he kind of pulled me aside. He's like, "What's going on?" And I was just losing my mind. I'm like, "What am I doing here?" I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, I literally don't know what I'm doing. I'm completely faking all of this. I'm a con man. I'm like, for real. I mean, in a way, as an actor, that's kind of the gig. But at the same time, I'm like, and it's like everybody feels that,
Yes.
Some people have degrees and some people go to school for things and whatnot. And I'm sure that they have maybe a little bit more comfort in what they're doing.
I don't think so. I think imposter syndrome is real for everybody.
Yeah. So that aspect of it was a lot. And of course there's a lot of pressure in what I'm doing. And there's a lot of there's a lot on the line, and you want to show up and give the best you can for you and for everyone else. And you don't want to disappoint anybody. However, this show has been, it's interesting because, it did all happen relatively fast getting to this show, but there was a lot that I experienced. I kind of like to say that I had the regular experience, but it was like expedited, like it was the speed dating version of it. So I kind of just experienced like all the stuff, like, again, we don't have to go into this, but like living in my car for a little bit to get by, showering at the gym in the morning because that was, stealing food from set on my way out because I wasn't getting paid too much, but I was paid enough to kind of survive and going through all that and whatnot. Like speaking of, we spoke earlier about how, you learn by what, what's not good for you a lot of the times too. And so I went through a lot of that. And so, and some toxic environments and whatnot, I won't go into that, but when this show came together and Tim Federle is such, he's a legend. I mean, he's going to go down in history. He is incredible and such a huge role model, but his eye he knew when he was casting the show, when he put us all together. And so, sorry, long story short, filming the show was absolute magic, an absolute pinch me moment, start to finish. I mean, it still is. And we got to film a little bit of season 2 and coming back, and that was just so wonderful. But, everyone being there and like we're talking about energy, just the sincerity in everyone in the show and the genuine bond that we have, and the fact that we have game nights twice a week, the fact that we all stay on set to watch each other, all that is like, you can't buy that. That's very special, especially when you've had the opposite of that, so you really
appreciate it more. But how did you, I'm curious how you, in the moment that you were feeling imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of people can relate to, by the way, at all stages and ages of their life, there is this feeling of like, great. I'm sorry to tell you, but it doesn't get any better. But you do get better at realizing you're not alone in it. And actually the bravery, even in you sharing that, is really important, because I think it unlocks for other people to know that if that were to happen to them, maybe they're playing a solo in a concert for the first time, or they're presenting their science fair project, or somebody's going out for a job. Like anytime you're putting yourself out there in a vulnerable way, that attack voice, or that kind of, that voice that tells you you're not the real deal, is likely to come. That shame monster kind of shows up.
Yeah.
So how did you navigate around that, or what's a tool that you've learned to incorporate if you have moments like that? Again, how'd you get out of that moment maybe?
Totally. I mean, I think this might sound cliche, but truly, like, once you realize that if you own everything that you are and everything that you do, then you being on stage giving a speech and completely losing your train of thought or completely fumbling, once you own, like if you were to own that in that moment, it's like, oh, that's not scary at all. If somebody sees somebody mess up in their thing and they just go, oh, excuse me, sorry, I totally got off track. Let me try that again. And you go, it's like that. You have to own it is one thing, I think, which again isn't very practical advice, but I mean, I don't really know. Meditation for me has really helped, honestly, in staying present. And one key thing that I learned from season 1 of my show and that I carried into season 2 was we were doing these, we do table reads every episode where we all get the script and we sit around the table and all the executives listen in and they basically see, okay, what's working, what's not working, what jokes land, what jokes don't land, what do we need to cut. And I would always get extreme anxiety over the table reads because you feel this pressure. There's all the execs watching. You want to do the script justice. And afterwards, every single time I'd be like, God, like, I'd go over to one of my castmates and be like, oh, that was so embarrassing when I said this, or I completely screwed up this line. And they'd be like, oh, you did? Oh, I didn't even notice. Oh, I can't believe when I stutter on that line. I'm like, oh, you did? I didn't even notice. And it's like, you realize like it's not about you, No. And those things that's for the producers to see the thing. You just honor the moment and it's not about you and fully embracing that there is no mistake, because when you own it, it's not a mistake,
That's right.
When you own everything, it's like that revelation and kind of realization is ultimately the attitude and mind shift that will change everything. Because
that's vulnerability. That's vulnerability to say, I make mistakes. I have talent and I make mistakes. And those are not mutually exclusive things, right? And I think that vulnerability of ownership that you're talking about is a powerful tool to use, because that's actually self-acceptance and grace and love for yourself as well. And you're so right. What we think people are going to attack us for or punish us for or make fun of us for often is much greater in our head. Now, granted, people can be asses and people get bullied and picked on all the time. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying our own self-flagellation that we do when we put ourselves out there can be worse than what we imagine.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that anybody who is going to be quick to either make you feel bad for screwing up or judge you or try and push their own hurt onto you. I think recognizing that that's almost entirely a them thing and not a you thing at all really relieves that worry, because you know, like, you know, they probably that's probably an insecurity of theirs that they are projecting onto you that they don't even realize is an insecurity, or that they're projecting it onto you. But a lot of times what people say says more about them than it does about you. And I think
I would say most of the time that's true.
But same thing for yourself too. That's another thing too, is a lot of times when you judge people, you need to pay attention to what are you reacting to. There's probably something going on there that you know.
Or when you find yourself criticizing somebody else, to ask yourself what is that bringing up for you? Why is that so familiar for you?
Exactly. It's almost one thing that I love. Dax Shepard talks about. I'm totally going to misquote him, but you know, he was talking about how he was at this party, and this is similar to what I just said about the table read. Afterwards, you know, he was like, God, did you see Melanie? She wouldn't shut up the whole night. And someone's like, oh, would she? I didn't notice. Did you see Brian? He was being a complete jerk the whole time. It's like, oh no, I didn't notice that. Did you guys notice this? It's like everyone picks out the things that stand out to them. And it's like, pay attention to why that bothered you, but that didn't, you know, it's like, totally.
But see, this is why I wanted to have these conversations, because I think what we're also really talking about is the glorious and messy, but important journey of learning about who we are. Because everything we're talking about requires some self-love, some grace, some curiosity, some openness, some work. And I think we're our greatest project in the world. I think sometimes we think there's always something external that's going to fill us up, but I'm even filled up by this conversation because it's just more validation that these conversations are important no matter what age and stage you're at in your life. And you were making me think about that when you were saying, like, you lived a life kind of in this compressed way. And I guess maybe the thing I would challenge into that is that, you know, we learn lessons when we learn them and how fast we learn them. And there really is no like requisite time of which for us to learn lessons. Like, you're speaking my language at a level where you're, you know, 19, I'm 46. Like, it took me this many years and this much time and experience to get here. You're having this intersection now. Like, one is not better or different, you know, it's just different than the other. And I think that, I think sometimes we judge our journeys because we're comparing them so much to where we think we're supposed to be. Like, oh, I can't, you know, I didn't live X this way, so therefore I can't learn Y. And it's like, you learn what you learn as long as you're in engagement and relationship to your life. We've got the whole, I mean, that's the whole point of the show. Like, we are all going to die anyway. So like, let's enjoy the part where we're living.
Love and evolve. Love and evolve. That's all.
And evolve. So I want to ask about that because, you know, interestingly enough, the quote that you said, the Albert Einstein quote where you said, say that one more time. That was like,
coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous.
So the person who said that to me earlier today was an episode I was taping with my friend Catherine. And the whole reason I was inspired to do this show was because I got to know her sister as she was spending the last 8 weeks of life on Earth. So her sister died from a terminal cancer. I didn't know her very well. She was a client of mine. I got to know her literally as she was exiting the earth. And I talk about this, and we'll talk about this a lot on this show, because Myra is her name. Myra was a great inspiration to me as somebody who was leaving with 3 small children behind and a wonderful husband and a vibrant career, but her physical time on this planet was up. And when she was facing that moment, she imparted to me some wisdom that I'm hearing in our conversation right now, which was about spending, when I asked her what she might have, you know, regretted or thought about more so than regret, as she knew her time was coming to a close, she talked about wishing that she would have learned more about herself, that she would have spent less time maybe pleasing some of the external forces and focusing on who she is. And it sobered me up in a way to grab this like urgent living and these vibrant conversations now versus waiting for connection.
Absolutely.
How does that land for you? I'm curious what you hear when you hear that at your stage in life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I have been, you know, I go back and forth because I'm still like, it does, like you said, it takes work to get there. And I try and read as much as I can, but oftentimes, like, you know, there is sometimes a part of you that doesn't actually want to improve. And I think that's an important thing to recognize. Like sometimes you self-sabotage when you eat the meal that you know you shouldn't eat, or you go on Twitter when you know it's going to make you feel awful. You know, it's like sometimes you self-sabotage, and breaking that cycle is a lifelong challenge. But I will say that that's an interesting thing in this. I think this runs parallel to it. This is an interesting lesson I've relearned recently in songwriting, is write about what is happening to you right now. The best songs are the ones that come when someone writes about what is happening to them in that moment. When you sit down and write what is on your mind, write about that. If you throw away that song, that's fine. But trying to think, what's a good idea? Let me think of an idea. The idea is there. What are you experiencing? Even if I wrote a song, I was in a broken down minivan and I wrote a song about that. And it's like one of my favorite songs I've ever written. It's like, you know, it's like write about that. But at the same time, the parallel to that, to life is, I think this is an Eckhart Tolle quote, it's how do you know this is the experience you're supposed to be having? Because it's the experience you're having right now.
Yep.
And I think recognizing that, and that life is the ultimate teacher, you know, and knowing that and paying attention to that, you start to realize, one, the cycle of negativity in your life, oftentimes, not always, of course, oftentimes can be assigned to you. If something's happening to you over and over again, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. It's like when you pay attention to what's happening to you, you know, it's like, what is going on around you? That's the same thing with being present, is like, instead of getting sucked into what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow, or being on your phone, or it's like, what is happening right now? What am I feeling right now? How do I see this as a lesson? And ultimately looking at life as a lesson, that attitude shift will radically change your life, because you recognize that is why it's happening to you, and that it is okay. It's instead of resenting what's happening, accept it and see it for what it is, and see what is the greater picture here. What can I take away from this? A small anecdote, pro tip for any actors. This is something that I did, was when I started auditioning, I treated every single audition that I walked out of, instead of thinking, oh, I hope I got it, I wonder if I got it, I did terribly, I did great, I took away and I wrote down one lesson I learned every audition. That way, if I got it, I didn't get it, at least it was something I learned from that, whether it's a casting director saying—
Where did you get that from? Where did you get that technique from?
I don't know. I just was like, this is because basically I was like, I kept relearning the same things. I kept going in and having a casting director say, you need to slow down. Here I am, right? Or, you know, the punctuation or whatever it is. Punctuation, what? Enunciation. I can talk. Or both, all the above, doesn't matter. They'd be like, or you're swaying back and forth or whatever. And I noticed that I would get the same notes over and over again. And I'm like, okay, if I'm not constantly evolving after I go into these, I'm not booking them. So what am I gaining here? Nothing. It's like, use those rejections as, okay, what can I do better next time? Pay attention to that. And then every once in a while you refresh and you go, oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot that they told me that 3 months ago. And then the next time you're in an audition, you have that in the back of your head and you do that much better, because, you know, so treating every failure as a lesson, which is probably a cliche, but for a reason, is ultimately my takeaway.
You know what I love about what you just said, and also this conversation in general, is that you can have a lot of fun being a student of your own life. You know, I think sometimes we can get socialized to think that life happens outside of us. It happens from other people. Like we have to be constantly plugged into like approval externally. And what I'm hearing is there's actually an old book that's been out for a long time called The Game of Life and How to Play It. That'll be something I'll gift that to you. I'm going to send you that book. It's like, literally, I think it's from like the 1920s, but you read it and the philosophies are still the same, which is
because the truth is
the truth is the truth.
There's no time to truth.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But I love the idea that like the time that we're given to be alive. So we're all born, we're all going to die. That is a given. But the lifetime that we spend and how we spend it doesn't always have to be associated with external validation or results. It can be a lot of this fun of learning about who you are, of knowing that you're going to make mistakes, that you're not going to get every role. You didn't. And you won't. And then what I love that you kind of turned it into a game. This is what it sounded like to me. You gamified life, which was like, great. Yeah. And what did I learn from this moment? And how do I better myself versus, oh, I'm a piece of crap because I didn't book that one.
Right. Totally. Yep. Absolutely. I think I love the idea of, befriending the present moment. And yeah. Totally.
I love that too. So if you were to imagine, what it means to live a good life for you, like when you look at the values, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, like our value systems that kind of structure our life, the things that we hold most dear. But part of, I think, the result of this program and these conversations is, we all know we end up with we all know we end up with the same fate. Okay. We're not going to last forever. At least as far as I know it right now, no one's escaping it. We're all going to leave the planet at some point, but, I'm on this journey to figure out La Buena Vida, the good life. What is it for me? How do I make a life on my own terms that really makes me happy, lights me up? What are some of the ingredients, do you think, for you right now that makes a good life?
Sure. I think there's a couple. One of the main things is the misconception, or not the misconception, but the unconscious sort of belief that instant gratification is better than long-term happiness. And I think that a lot of times, a good example is I've been getting up at 5 a.m. to run. I basically go on a run up a hill, and then I sit on a thing and meditate while the sun comes up, and then I run back home, and it's like, it's great. It's like beautiful. Amazing. It changed my entire life, and every day I do it. My entire day is better. But the thing is, when I get up at 5 a.m, it is literally it is the hardest thing to do in the world. And I think that that's just a small example of a lot of things in life. And it's like, I can give you 1,000 examples of how it's like sometimes not focusing on what's going to make me feel the best in this moment. Sometimes just embracing that, like, part of life sucks. Like sometimes it sucks, but to get to that long-term happiness, you have to go through that. So I would say paying attention to not allowing instant gratification to always win the battle, and recognizing sometimes that life being maybe a little bit harder is ultimately better, and being able to recognize that is huge. I said it earlier, but that was kind of a big revelation for me, is realizing that if we're not loving or evolving, what are we doing? It's like, if you're not trying to better yourself, be better for the people around you, better the culture, better whatever it is. If you're not trying to love people, which is, by the way, that's the way to do it, is to love people, and by loving them, you understand them, and that's how you can grow and all that. And then I kind of totally got spinned around. I was talking about
loving and evolving.
Yeah. It's just, anytime I kind of wake up and have been on my phone for 2 hours, or realize that I've been hanging out with people who I am not, who are really bringing down my vibrations and frequency, and are dragging me down. And just because I didn't really, it's uncomfortable to be like, oh, I'm going to go. Like, when I realized that, like, oh, I just wasted 3 hours of my life being not as either productive or as happy as I could be. It's like, I'm always like, why are we wasting any time allowing ourselves to be like that? And I think once you realize that, and you live your life intentionally, that to me is the life, is being intentional. Like I said, making the default love and evolve. And then when you want to kind of let yourself off the hook and have a night, relax, do whatever, do something fun, maybe eat the donut that you shouldn't eat, as long as it's your primary state of mind is intentional, as long as you are paying attention. That's the thing. That's the same thing with learning about life, is like, when you pay attention, you learn lessons. When you're not paying attention, your life keeps,
well, the lessons will come back and bite you in the ass.
Exactly. Until you do. Exactly.
And at the end of the day, who we love, how we love, to your point, how we love and evolve, like, these are the elements for me of living a good life. And it's a process. As long as we keep remembering it's a process.
Yeah, I think
we're not supposed to figure it out all the way.
Absolutely. That was honestly one of the biggest lessons I learned then, and I'm continuously relearning, is trust. If it's beyond your control, all you can do is accept it and trust that there is that magic, and there is a greater sort of, it's like I said, it's not all about you. It's like, sometimes, now when people leave my life for reasons that I can't save, or reasons that I can't explain, I know, okay, if they, like the whole, if you love something, set it free. And if it was really yours, it'll come back to you, something like that.
Yep.
that's a real thing. And I think having that mindset and mentality and being able to hold life in your hand like this versus like this, just being able to hold it like that as it comes and goes. And, that trust in all of that is vital, especially to your peace of mind, but to your growth. And so then you can actually focus, like when that does happen to you, when you go through that, it's like, okay, I might not be able to see what's happening right now. I might not be able to see what's happening for 10 years. I might not ever see what's happening. Maybe it's for them. Maybe whatever happened between us is because they needed this right now. And that's okay too. Knowing that it's not about you, knowing to trust that and having that is ultimately, to me, how you can do what you want to do and enjoy and experience life fully without having to worry about all the stuff that you can't control, because why worry about it? You can't do anything about it. So yeah.
I love it. So my last question to you is, in this position that you've been given and the opportunities that you have before you to bring your art, yourself, your thinking, your creativity, your voice, to the world, what is a legacy that you imagine you'd like to leave? Like, what would be really important for you to leave behind when you're not here anymore?
Yeah, that is such a great question. That's something I gotta do a lot of soul searching for. I don't necessarily know if I have an idea of a legacy. I mean,
how do you hope we would talk about you? How do you hope you would reign impact? What do you imagine in your mind?
Yeah, I think something that comes from having 5 sisters is the ability to be in a room and notice when somebody maybe said something and nobody heard them say it, and being able to say, what did you say? I didn't hear you. Or paying attention to that, and kind of being somebody who is sensitive to the moment and sensitive to something, and recognizing like I have ways that I can help. That is not necessarily what the first thought that everyone has. And honestly, I don't know, like being honest and authentic is something that I really prioritize in my music. I it's like if I'm not being honest in my music, then I can't make music, so it's like being honest in that way. And also like, paying attention to the ways in which I can contribute. I don't know. It's paying attention, I think. And
what you just described and rooting for the underdog. I was just going to say, what you described was this beautiful ability to see somebody. There's a gift when you notice somebody, when you do pay attention to other people, when you pay attention, you call them the underdog, even if it's just about paying attention and really seeing somebody. It's such a gift because it lets them know they matter. It lets them know that they're here. And that they're seen.
Absolutely. I think that's part of why people are on Twitter, people are on Instagram, is like everyone wants to be seen.
Yes,
everyone deep down, they want to be seen and accepted for who they are. So the best thing you can do for somebody, in my mind, is one, pay attention to them and give them your focus, but also just accept them as they are, completely as they are.
Yeah.
Now, again, that doesn't mean you have to accept everything that they do, or you have to defend them, and accepting them that they are a human being and accepting them as they are is ultimately what everyone needs, because no one's going to change. No one's going to, when people don't feel loved, they can close off. And
Right.
Ultimately, when people have the ability to be as they are, the last thing you should do is make anybody feel self-conscious about themselves or have to worry about how they are, and just let them be, accept everybody. I think that's the most important thing. And that's
and
that's
can't
part
change.
of when I grew up, sorry to cut you off. That's part of my my childhood, is, like I said, the ability to not have to think about social social hierarchies or anything. With my family, it's like we're all just are, and we all can be as ourselves as possible and not have to apologize for being being who we are.
I was going to add just to those beautiful last words that when you talk about, people will only change when they do the work. That's the other thing. Like we cannot change another person. They've got to be able to do their own work, go on their own journey, which is why falling in love with yourself as your best project to work on and falling in love with your life is a great thing to do.
Absolutely. Because being an example, is one of the most important things you can do, because you can tell people you should start doing this, or you need to do this, or you could, but what's 10 times more valuable, absolutely 100 times more valuable, is when people look at you and go, oh, he's doing that. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to do that. I want to be like that. And, it's like, they say be the change you want to see in the world, but it's like, really think and then pay attention to what you're telling other people to do. It's like, maybe you should just do that yourself. And then by being, people will either pick up on that or they won't. And that's their journey. And all you can control is your journey. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Your personal journey is the priority, and befriending the present moment, like I said, and that's you're spot on. You're spot on.
You're spot on. And you're an incredible example of curiosity and self-love in motion. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation so much, because it doesn't mean that that's perfect. It just means that it's in progress. And that is inspiring to hear about and to talk about. I'm so happy you have a public platform in the world, because not that you owe anybody anything, because you don't, but I love that by virtue of who you are being in this world, you may have a chance to impact and influence and inspire other people to find that within themselves. To whom much is given, much is expected. But I'm in it to root for you to have these kinds of self-awarenesses and self-discoveries as you live in this life. I feel really grateful that we got to have this conversation.
Thank you, Jess. I mean, when I met you, I just had a feeling. I knew you were important, and I knew you were a light. And just this podcast, the fact that when you told me about this, I was like, that is so brilliant. I'm like, that's so important. And I think your light is truly inspiring, and thank you. I appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you so much for thinking of me.
Ditto. And to be continued, we have a PEMA book club to start. Don't forget.
Yes, we do. I am in. I'm going to
send you some of those books. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
His energy is infectious, isn't it? He gets so excited, so enthusiastic. It's exactly how it was when we first met, where I just thought, oh my gosh, like, this young person has so much to offer the world. And I don't mean to harp on the age, but I get so inspired when I see and hear young people grappling with these bigger life issues, because clearly it is never too young to be exploring these topics. And in fact, what I loved a lot about where we were going today was the conversation about being present. I think in this world where we are spinning so fast, where we are constantly absorbing information and content and imagery, which I know can be fun and connective, but also can be quite exhausting and overwhelming. And as Josh was talking about, lead to a lot of fear of FOMO. The idea of being present is something that's really helped my anxiety in my life, has helped ground and center me. And I love that he's exploring that as well, because there's a great benefit that comes from being present, which is that when you're present and still in your body and connected to who you are, then you're much more able to look and see and connect to other people. And that's where we ended this conversation that I loved, which is the power of being seen, of being heard. I think that is probably the biggest gift we can give ourselves, to really see ourselves, but certainly it's a gift that we can give other people. And probably outside of the crazy coincidence quote that he brought up that I've now heard twice today, so I'm going to listen to that sign. Probably my favorite phrase from this conversation is love and evolve. I'll probably say that over and over. Love and evolve, love and evolve, love and evolve. I'm so grateful that you're on this journey with me. I'd love to know what you got from this conversation. What really lit you up? What questions do you have? You can always reach out and ask me at podcast@jessweiner.com. But where does this sit for you? What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? And as always, thanks for going on this journey with me. You've been listening to We're All Gonna Die Anyway with me, Jess Weiner. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can also watch this podcast by checking out my YouTube channel for filmed episodes, behind the scenes footage, and all other kinds of amazing video goodies. And of course, you can always visit me at jessweiner.com. We're All Gonna Die Anyway is exec produced by me and produced by Lauren Chavez Myers. Our episodes are recorded, filmed, and edited by Jeff Franklin and Adam Lippert of B Film. And our original amazing music is by Becca and Destiny Petrell. As always, I want to send a special thank you to the love of my life, the amor de mi vida, Felipe Lopez. And if you love this podcast, Please make sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and leave a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, if there is something that stood out to you from today's episode, I want to hear about it. So if you want to share your own story, leave a comment, ask a question, please send me an email at podcast@jessweiner.com. I can't wait to hear from you. Bye, babies.